Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. You know what I'm about to ask. Download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content, not just the fantastic interviews that Joe and I do here on Veritas. And hey, if you like what we do, we go live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time on social media. So if you see us there, whether it's this interview, whether it's our social media show, X, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, till they take us down, of course, which I'm sure is imminent. However, we're there at the moment. So if you see us, help us out. Today, we're very pleased and honored to be joined by Jonathan Coussens. And Jonathan is the director of Something to Stand For. So everybody out there, you might not be nobody's ever, a lot of times, Jonathan, familiar with the producer director. You guys are just the guys that make everything happen. But Mike Rowe, who many people out there know, Mike presents Something to Stand For, and Jonathan is the director. And so this is going to be a great conversation. This is right up our alley here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Jonathan Coussens, for those who don't know, is an award-winning producer-director originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you're still in Oklahoma, correct?
I am. Yep. Right here in the heartland, doing
All right.
everything with heart. There you go.
There you go. So Jonathan's career encompasses national commercial advertising campaigns and nonprofit development. He's produced and directed campaigns for the largest nonprofits in the United States, including St. Jude, the American Red Cross, the United Nations, Shriners Hospital for Children. He has a unique understanding of inspirational broadcasting. You'll understand where we're going with that when we get into the conversation about this film. And he's produced and directed hundreds of television commercials, documentaries, multiple television shows, and worked with production companies across the U.S. and internationally. Jonathan Coussens, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, brother.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe. And like I said, we're going to have a great conversation.
Jonathan, we always begin with a prayer. It's our custom. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother, the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us, amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Well, John, I'll be honest, Oklahoma, I've been there a few times. It's an interesting state, and I liked it. I have some ties to Oklahoma, believe it or not. A guy that grew up with me down the street, Bobby Walton, played at Oklahoma State. He coached at Oral Roberts, and now he is the assistant coach at Oklahoma State in baseball. Do you know the name?
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually a track athlete at Oral Roberts University whenever I was in college. Ran the 100, the 200 there, and so I'm familiar with Coach Walton. Absolutely.
He grew up down the street from me. No lie.
Wow, that's wild. That's crazy.
Yeah, no lie. I mean, he's like one of, actually, Joe Pasillo, his cousin and Bobby played on a team that won the 16 to 18 World Series. His cousin, Pat Pasillo, played on the Olympics, and they played with Bobby. So,
Wow.
Like, that's crazy. Like, I haven't seen him.
I tell you what, we have some great baseball teams here in Oklahoma. ORU, Oral Roberts University, OU, OSU, they're all always in the hunt. Last year, ORU went to the College World Series. So alma mater here, got to be proud of that. I actually went up there to Omaha to watch, and it was quite the experience. I encourage anybody, if you ever get a chance to go to the College World Series, it is a lot of fun right in the middle of America. It's an awesome experience. So
awesome. So Jonathan, how, again, even in our prayer, we mentioned the word, inspiration, or to be inspired. All right. So you got, and Mike Rowe, let's face it, the guy, he's a regular dude. I don't care what anybody says. You could tell the difference between BS and an authentic guy. He's an authentic guy. And you made this movie here. So let's start here. I think a good place to start is, what interested you personally in making this film? Why is it something that you guys think is important for America to see, especially at this time?
Yeah, so Something to Stand For, just for your audience to kind of know what it is a road trip to DC, and Mike visits all of the monuments and memorials that we all that are famous there in the city. And along the way, he tells 9 short stories of famous Americans and really what made our country great. And what inspired us to make the film is, it is a love letter to America. And it's also a letter to the next generation. We remind people where we came from, look at our past. We look at all of the great people that have built the country and what they did. And then it also reminds the next generation of, hey, these people came behind you. Take something that you learn in this documentary and take it forward. So I think what really inspired me is that this movie is about sacrifice and hope. And I think if we look in our nation's past, those two virtues, those sacrifice and hope, that's kind of what this country was built on. So I think it is it's a, like I said, it's a love letter to America, and every great patriot should go and see it.
Absolutely. And let me follow up just for a second, if you don't mind, Joe Resinello. Something to stand for is the movie we're talking about. Mike Rowe presents. Jonathan Coussens is with us. Jonathan, real quick, we'll mention it a few times during the conversation. So at the moment, where can our audience members go and watch the movie?
Yeah, so it opens Thursday, June 27th, and it will be in theaters through July 4th. You can get tickets at somethingtostandfor.movie. It's going to be in basically every Cinemark, AMC, and Regal all across the country. So there will definitely be a showing near you, and it's a great way to celebrate the 4th of July and Independence Day. So go out, watch the movie, especially opening weekend. Vote with your dollars, as they say. So it's a family movie. So go see it with your family.
Couple of things real quick before I hand it over to Joe. Number one, Jonathan, at any point in this conversation, Joe and I, we say all the time, we're a couple of big mouth Italians, all right? But if we don't want to give away the movie, we want to talk about the movie, all right, and give people a little flavor. We don't want to give it away. So don't feel bad if you say, guys, no, I'm taking the fifth on that.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. The other thing is this. Just going to ask your opinion on this. It's just a question that popped into my head. I think that no matter where you are, no matter what country you live in, okay, if you want to find fault with your nation's history, I mean, nobody's exempt from that. America is not perfect, but here's the thing: nor do we expect perfection. Okay, America is just like any other institution, human institution is gonna have its problems because you're dealing with people, sinful people. Okay, but we do have a lot to be proud of in our history. And I think right now, one of the things that's raging out there, Joe, some people call it the culture war, some people call it the spiritual battle, is that somehow, some way, we're supposed to be perfect in America. We're exempt from fallen humanity somehow. And I don't think that's fair. And I think it's important that movies like yours comes out and say, oh, well, hold on, guys, hold on. We understand that we've had our issues in America. We had slavery, for heaven's sake, and other things. Okay, but we're not a bad country. Okay, we're a pretty good country, actually. And here's a reason to be inspired. I think you know where I'm going, Jonathan Coussens. Your response to that?
Yeah, I think we've always been under construction. I mean, from the very beginning, we've tried to make something new. The founding fathers, they were trying to make something better, so they created the Articles of Confederation, and then that didn't work, so then they created the Constitution. So I think we've always been under construction, and so that continues even to this day. I think if we look to our past full of problems and realize which we've made some mistakes, I don't think anyone would not acknowledge that. But I think sometimes we focus on the problems way too much. I think there needs to be an effort, and what our movie really does is look to the past with gratitude. If we can look at the people that have come before us, recognize their problems, but also recognize their sacrifice, recognize their brilliance, recognize the hope that they gave us for the future. I think if we look to the past with gratitude, it will allow us to look to the future with optimism. And I think that's kind of where we've taken a little bit of a turn, is we've forgotten how to be optimistic in this country. We've forgotten how to look to the future with great hope. And I think if we can allow the past to inspire us, which the movie really does, something to stand for. I mean, it's in the title. Hopefully we can give you something to remind you that our country is still worth standing for. And I think if we look at the past with gratitude, we can have a future of hope.
Absolutely. Jonathan Cousins joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Mike Rowe presents Something to Stand For in theaters on the 27th. Jonathan will let us know the website again. You could go there and you can purchase tickets. Jonathan, the website, if you don't mind, one more time.
Something to stand for .movie.
Awesome. Joe Rossinello, where do you want to go?
I'm going to start with the title. Ultimately, it's in us as humans, all humans, to be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. That's why Joe and I do this. We don't get paid. We do it because we believe in God. We're Catholics, and we give of our times and our time and our gifts. Now, the title, Something to Stand For. We all want to stand for something, but what we see now, if you turn on the news, it's all like emotionally filled propaganda. That's kind of how I'm going to couch it. And I'm interested in your view on that as well as Joe Pasillo. Everyone's standing for something, but when you look at like what you guys put together in this film, these were like eternal things, like deep, like virtue and like love of things that are greater, much greater. And then you look at what's going on now. People are standing for things that you're like, really? You're going to die on that hill? That's the hill you're going to die on? Like, I'll be honest with you. I'm not dying on that hill. Talk about
I'm running
that.
away. I'm running away from that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going anywhere near that.
But explore that, because I think all people have that desire, but we, like you said, we've drifted away from things that are foundational.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point. I also think it's important to remember that propaganda isn't new. From the very beginning, Alexander Hamilton and John Jay and James Madison, they wrote the Federalist Papers in order to try to convince people to vote for the Constitution. So I don't think propaganda is new. I mean, the news media and the news outlets have always been used to push some sort of narrative. I think the question is, what stories are we telling? And are we telling the right stories that give people hope? I think we have kind of drifted away from telling hope-filled stories or inspirational stories. And I think our movie, Something to Stand For, it is not a right, a left, a Republican, or a Democrat film. It's a patriotic film. And really, it's not filled with propaganda. What it's filled with is filled with stories of hope. It's filled with stories of determination, courage, grit. Those are the things that are timeless. And hopefully, you can spin anything, Joe and Joe. You can spin anything. You can spin Cheerios. I mean, people are already spinning Oreos, for goodness sake. The main thing is we have to take a look at the stories that we're telling and making sure that we're giving people something to stand for and giving them a better option than stories filled with negativity, pessimism about our future. And really, that's what our movie does. Our movie tells a story of hope.
Jonathan Cousins, let me ask you a question, because I could hear people out there. Okay, no, you guys are talking about patriotism and things like that. No, it's a political movie. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Micro starts out the movie by saying it ain't a political movie.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, that I think that's the whole thing. We've been so conditioned to look at every piece of media that's coming at us, going, what are they trying to say? What are they doing? What are they trying to spin me for today? And I think what we wanted to do at the very beginning of this film is kind of take that off the table. Say, hey, listen, we're not trying to persuade you. What we're trying to do is remind you. We're trying to remind you where we came from and give you something to look forward to in the future. I think whenever we're given any form of media, we're all skeptical of what is this person trying to persuade me to do, or what underlying spin are they trying to put on this? And Mike, right off the top, brilliantly says this isn't a political movie, because he doesn't want you to be thinking of it in right, left, Republican, or Democrat terms. We want you to be looking at this movie in American terms. We want you to be looking at this movie in universal themes of sacrifice, universal themes of patriotism. I don't know any person on the right or the left that isn't a fan of freedom. I mean, you could argue that there are people trying to strip away our freedoms, but I could also argue that they believe that what they're doing is right. And I think what we're trying to do here is say, hey, let's all come underneath a banner of freedom. Let's all come underneath the banner of the foundation that was laid for us of our founding fathers' sacrifice and look towards the future and go, how do we get back to there? And it's only by being reminded of what they did that we can move forward with hope and with optimism.
Jonathan, I just want to say this, and I'm going to hand it over to Joe. You know what I'd like to get back to in America? I'd like to get back to being able to go to a Jets game. All right. And the guy sitting next to me is wearing green and white, and I'm wearing green and white. And I don't really give a crap at that moment what his politics are. I'm being honest, because I would venture to say, we're going to talk a little bit about the Marine Corps in a bit. Okay. I would venture to say if you're fighting Nazis, okay, or you're fighting the Japanese during World War II, you're not exactly asking your buddy who is either about to fight or is fighting with you and maybe about to die with you, okay, who he voted for, okay, because and I think you know where I'm going. It's like I think the people that really don't like America, that would really like nothing more to either tear it down or transform it into something that all you could say is God knows what, are those who want to inject politics into everything, so that I can't go to that Jet game.
Yeah,
without
I
being.
think
Go
you're
ahead.
right. I think there is a narrative of division. And that's why this movie exists. This movie exists as a narrative of unison, or it's an effort to unite the country under a shared value of the love of freedom, the love of courage, determination, and resilience that define the American experience. You know, this film is hopefully a tribute to what makes our nation great. There's a lot of stories in this film of famous Americans that everyone knows, but there's stories that people don't know about them, about how one of the most famous Americans in our history got into a duel with someone, and he ended up being one of the greatest Americans ever. So there is always going to be division. The question is, what story are we telling, and can we bring Americans underneath the umbrella of the love for freedom? And I think that's really what Something to Stand For with Mike Rowe really does. And that's what we tried to do in the film.
Mike Rowe presents Something to Stand For. The film's going to be out on June 27th. Please go on the website and go and buy tickets. And we're with Jonathan Coussens here, and we're discussing the film. Yeah, I mean, if we could even get back to something, I mean, it's almost like basic civics. You learned it when you were in third grade. E pluribus unum. Okay, we're many. We have different views, come from different religions and backgrounds. But we should have at least a few things that bind us as Americans. And again, like you said, well, hey, if it takes your movie, Jonathan, and a million more like it to try to hammer home to people that all we're doing is ripping each other apart rather than trying to come together, we're never going to move forward as a nation.
I
Joe
agree.
Rossinello. Oh, go ahead,
Please, Joe,
Jonathan.
please.
I agree. I think we have to change the narrative. We have to change the stories we're telling. And the only way that people change that stories is if they say, hey, I like that story. I'm going to give my money to that story. And then more stories like that will be created. I know it's a selfish plug. I know it's a super selfish plug to say, go see my movie if you want to change the country. But really, if you put dollars behind something that you believe in, then more of those things will be created. And I think that's really the hope for this country, is by believing that we do have that we do come from a place of freedom, and that freedom is still something that we all aspire to.
Absolutely. Joe Rossinello, where do you want to go?
Well, Joe, you segued very nicely into the Marine Corps, and that was featured in the film. My grandfather on my mother's side was a Marine, and two of my aunts married Marines who fought in Korea. My grandfather was in World War II. I know about the Marines a little bit because of that, and I know at the end of boot camp in Paris Island, there's something called the Crucible. It basically brings men together, and they have to basically work together to get over like a trial. All types of men, they have all a job. And I think that's what we're lacking. Like, we have to look at things as what we see in America is a trial, and we all need to work together. We all have something to basically participate and contribute to that trial. But talk about the Marines as basically a model of excellence. You featured it very well. I don't want to give away how you did it, but I thought it was masterful. If for those who should be going out and seeing this film, talk about the Marine Corps and talk a little bit about how you nuanced their, I guess, contribution to America.
Listen, anyone who serves in our military is a hero. I mean, we have a volunteer military service. That is that in itself, all of those people who serve deserve our honor and deserve our gratitude. Um, there's no other country in the history of the United States that doesn't look to the men and women that serve as heroes. One thing that I wanted to just say about the Marines is that we often forget that there are members that are sacrificing right now for our freedom. We look to the past and we remember, oh yeah, World War II or Korea or Vietnam, and we do that in our film. But what we also do in our film is we honor the military members that are serving today. And I think it's an important acknowledgement that we say thank you to those people that are out there on the front lines every day defending our freedom. We also visit Arlington in our film. You know, we worked closely with the U.S. Army and the Department of Defense in order to get access to places that most people don't get access to. And as you're standing in Arlington and you see all of the white tombstones, just hill after hill, acre after acre, it's really hard, really, really hard to not be moved by the sacrifice that was made for us in our history. And I think it's important to keep that in the forefront of our mind. You know, we are only guaranteed our freedom because of people that serve. And so if you want to say thank you, I think people, you know, I come from a commercial background where I did a lot of commercial work for some of the VSOs, Wounded Warrior Project, Disabled American Veterans. And every single person that I met, there's not one person that says I wouldn't go back and do it again. After all the hell they've been through, they all say, I'd still go back and do it again. And those types of people, those are the people that deserve all the honor and all the credit that they should get for going out and serving on behalf of all of us here at home, living our everyday daily life, doing our dirty job, if you will. So,
You know, John, it's funny, like at my parish, in the back of the parish, there's a plaque of the people who served in World War II and died. And I'm always in the back because I have young kids and I always have to come in and out of church. So, you know, my eyes kind of look around and I see this plaque. And I noticed that 3 brothers from the same family, the same surname, all died. And they went to that parish at one time. And as a father, I have 5 kids. I think to myself, and I have 3 sons. I think to myself, oh my Lord, this family lost 3 kids. It's a blue collar town. That is like heart-wrenching to lose a child, never mind 3. I mean, like people, again, you mentioned Arlington, how quick we forget the sacrifices of regular families. They
Yeah.
gave their, I mean, it's just, to be honest with you, it's, you know, you can't even wrap your mind around it.
No,
But
and
we,
you know, one thing that we're doing specifically, you know, what I hate is just giving lip service to it, you know, like and not really putting your actions behind the honoring. One thing that we're doing in the coming days, we're doing our first screening. We're not doing a traditional red carpet. You know, everybody in Hollywood, they want to gratitude themselves and shake hands and get the press photo op. We're not doing that for this movie. What we are doing is we're going to Camp Pendleton, just north of San Diego, between San Diego and LA. It's one of the largest Marine bases on the West Coast. And what we're doing is we're showing our movie to the Marines. Why? Because we want to say thank you. And this is a way to say, hey, we want to honor your sacrifice. Grab some popcorn. We'll pay for it. We'll take care of your drinks and your refreshments, but we just want to say thank you. We're not doing the red carpet thing. That's a bunch of crap. But what we are doing is we are honoring the military service members. And, you know, again, shameful plug. But if you want to honor those people, vote with your dollars again. Go see the movie, something to stand for .movie to get tickets.
I want to, we only have like a couple minutes. Jonathan Coussens joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, writer and producer and director, producer and director of Mike Rowe Presents Something to Stand For. Let's stay on that for 1 second for just the last couple minutes before the break. Now, again, we said earlier, everybody should know this. We all come from, many Americans come from different backgrounds, different religions and everything else. But then there does come a time where we have to unify around certain first principles, okay? And I really want your opinion on this. one of those principles is sacrifice. Now, some people sacrifice, or people sacrifice on different levels. Most of the time, for men, sacrifice means getting married, having kids. There's your built-in sacrifice for life, okay? Because then you have to die to yourself for your family, okay? But if you can't get that right, I think that's one of our problems in our society is, okay, yes, we all come from, but you have to be willing to sacrifice something. And I just think too many people, again, not right, left, you know, and you know, because we have plenty of criticisms of both. One of them we think is a lack of sacrifice or a willingness to do so. And I think we need to rally around that. We have about a minute and a half, Jonathan, before the break. I want to throw that over to you, see what you have to say about it.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories, my favorite story in the whole movie is the very last story. And the core principle there is it talks about three different individuals: a doctor, a slave fighting for his freedom, and two teenage boys. And without giving anything away, no spoilers, but all of them gave sacrifices and made huge sacrifices for our country in order to have hope for the future. If you look at what our founding fathers did, while they were signing the Declaration of Independence, they were putting their lives on the line. They became traitors immediately. Many of them were the top 1%ers in our nation, the uber wealthy men. They recognized that in order to have hope, they had to have sacrifice. And I think moving forward in our country today, and something that our film wants to make sure we tell the story of, is that if we don't recognize that sacrifice is important, how can we have hope for the future? And I think as we go into the 4th of July weekend, and we're honoring all of our military service members who have sacrificed, just tying it back to the Marine Corps, you know, we have to say thank you. We have to recognize their sacrifice. Because of them and because of the people that have given their lives for our country in the past, that's the only reason that we have our freedom and that we have an optimistic outlook for the future.
Absolutely. Jonathan Coussens, we now, once again, what's the website and any other social media that our audience member can follow, but most importantly, to go see the movie when it comes out?
Yeah, go to somethingtostandfor.movie. It's in theaters all over the country, every AMC, Cinemark, and Regal. Somethingtostandfor.movie. It's going to only be in theaters for 7 days, June 27th through the 4th of July. So please, please, please vote with your dollars. Go see the movie, Something to Stand For.
Absolutely. So Jonathan Coussens joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith in the New York City metropolitan area. We're so very honored, Jonathan, that you decided and agreed to come on the show to talk about this, because Joe and I think this is a fantastic movie. So we're going to encourage as much as we can for our audience members to go out there. And everybody out there knows what I'm about to ask. If you like this, if you think it's a movie that you want to see, then share it, because you'll probably be watching it on social media after it airs on the radio. Go and share it with your friends. All right. And because, yeah, I mean, we need to be inspired, yes, as a nation, not just as individuals, but as a nation, because like you said, Jonathan, without sacrifice, there's no hope. And obviously we're a hopeful people. That's one of the hallmarks of being an American. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back at the front line with Joe and Joe. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we are way in the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dials, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith in the New York City metropolitan area. So if you're just joining us, we have Jonathan Coussens with us here today. We're discussing, he is the producer and director of Mike Rowe's new film, Something to Stand For. That's going to be in theaters on June 27th. So you're going to want to go online. Jonathan will give us the website address again, and buy tickets. Most importantly, share this with your friends. Let's create a real buzz around this movie. Okay. And movies, by the way, Jonathan, just throw it over to you. Movies lately that have how about we put it like this? A little bit more of a traditional message. All right. Or is it too political to use the word traditional? I don't know. But
Everything's political, Joe. Everything.
Yeah, right. Everything. But movies that have a bit more of a traditional message lately, just from a dollars and cents free market perspective, all right, have been doing very, very well. Now, you want to talk about hope and being encouraged? That means that good, solid, traditional messaging regardless of whether it's a documentary or a narrative film, it's getting out there, and there's a market for it because I think people are getting tired of a lot of the stuff that's out there. We're not bashing Hollywood, or maybe we could a little bit if you want. But it's not that, there's nothing superficial about it. It
Yeah.
actually runs a little deep. Your comments, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, this isn't a right or left or conservative or Democrat film. I think that this is a patriotic movie. But to your point, I think traditional values we've kind of, the pendulum's begun to swing back the other way, saying people are seeing, people want something traditional. And I think our movie, Something to Stand For, we actually, while we went to DC, we made the majority of the movie right here where I'm from, here in Oklahoma. We call it the Heartland here in the middle of the country. And this movie's got a lot of heart. I mean, we have stories of the founding fathers. We have stories of men and women of our military service. We have stories of people who fought in the civil rights era for their own freedoms. And so I think what we want to communicate is, if you want to vote with your dollars and see a traditional film that has your traditional values, go see Something to Stand For over the 4th of July. It's only in theaters for 7 days, but it's really important that you go and make a statement that these are the types of stories that you want to see made. And that's the only way that they're going to be made, because somebody's going to make money off of it. And if nobody makes money off of it, those stories don't get made. Let's be honest. This is free market.
I'm gonna throw it over to Joe, but unless I'm wrong or unless the news changed, my understanding is that Netflix, which I got rid of a while ago for a variety of reasons I won't get into, a little bit of what we're talking about, okay, recently announced that they're going to pour quite a bit amount of money into what I think they're calling faith-based films. Now, and again, and faith-based films can mean specifically maybe Christian or whatever. I take that as meaning maybe a little bit more traditional, because I think they're seeing the writing on the wall too. Because, like you said, it's a free market, and but they're going to have to do a lot to get me to subscribe again. Joe Resinello.
I want to talk about diplomacy. You mentioned it earlier in the conversation, and it's a theme that's kind of discussed in the movie. Diplomacy is where people have a conversation, and sometimes in that conversation, someone has an advantage. That someone could even be stronger than the other person. Yet they don't necessarily put forth that strength in an aggressive manner. What I mean by that is throw fists or even use certain words. They leverage strength, they have a conversation, and many times they allow that other party to come to their own conclusion. And I think you did a great job with that theme. Talk about that, because I think we're lacking diplomacy. We're lacking it in the media. We're lacking it in our conversations on our streets. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. That's what a man is, by the way, a gentle man. A man has strength, but he puts that strength, if you ask me, behind like bars, so to speak, and he leverages that strength. You did a great job with that in this film. Talk about diplomacy. We're lacking it and we need it.
Yeah, I think, there's always things that we're close-fisted about, right? Things that we'll go to bat for, core beliefs that we'll go to fight for. And then there's other things that we're open-handed with, things that we can compromise on, or things that have negotiating things. Without having those core beliefs and things that you can fight for first, you don't have the strength to back you up when you do want to go and act in a diplomatic manner and begin to make compromises. I think throughout our nation's history, we've seen great men who have core central beliefs go to the table and defend what they believe, but also do it in a way that is gentlemanly, to your point, diplomatically. But I think today what we want to see in the country is men who have a backbone and defend not just their honor, but the honor of the things that they believe. And I think it's important that as we try to move forward, we don't compromise our beliefs for a quick political win or a quick result. We have to be long-term in our thinking, because the other side is definitely long-term in theirs. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think that's very
No,
true.
think it's spot on. Jonathan Cousens joined us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out and go and see the film when it comes out on June 27th. And it's only going to be in theaters for 7 days. We want to make sure that it lights up the theaters for those 7 days. Mike Rowe presents something to stand for. Jonathan, one more time, the website, please.
Yeah, something to stand for .movie. Or you can just go to Mike Rowe's social media. Mike Rowe, everybody knows him from Dirty Jobs. He's been on television for 20 years. And this is his first film. It's an amazing documentary mixed with blockbuster style reenactments. So we tell 9 short stories that Mike wrote, and we blow them out and blow them up in some cases. So it's a really fun movie.
Awesome. Jonathan, let me ask you this. I remember when I was a kid and let's say around 12, 13 years old, everybody was talking at the time, 1979, everybody was talking about the, Ronald Reagan. And again, I had some vague notion of who Ronald Reagan was just from listening to my father and my uncles talk around the kitchen table with the cigarette smoke billowing all over the place. Ronald Reagan won that election and then won again, not because of politics. I refuse to believe that. He offered a paradigm shift in America, okay? Because that's what I heard. And then looking back on history, he did. America shifted at that point, okay? And I like to think for the better. Not that Reagan was perfect, but he did move the country in a lot of people's view in the right direction from a paradigmatic point of view, not a political point of view. And I think that's what people miss. I'm sorry to be long-winded, but I love your thoughts on Ronald Reagan and the thoughts you might have put into the movie about Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ronald Reagan was one of the greatest storytellers in American history. He changed the narrative by his words. I mean, think about one of the greatest speeches of all time. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Love it.
There's no other way to tear down a wall that has been up for decades than with words. Who would have thought that someone would be able to tear down just with their words? And then on the domestic front, he was able to communicate his vision for America with his words. He told the story that he wanted to see in America. And I think that's what we have to do today. We have to change, and that's probably what you guys are doing or trying to do, is change the story by using words. And that's what we're trying to do with our movie, Something to Stand For, is change the story, using words, using our nation's history to remind audiences that, hey, there's still something worth standing for, and taking that story and hopefully changing minds, because that's really the only way that this culture and our history is preserved, if we're able to keep that story of our history and values in front of people.
I think, and I'm going to hand it over to Joe. Jonathan Cousens joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I think the people that would, let's just call them people that would tear down America, okay? I think that's why they detest social media, because we could actually come together. Now, I mean, Joe and I been doing this since 2018, just to give you an example, right? We're in a market over on the East Coast, okay, around New York City. Hopefully, God willing, our station's about to go into New York City, right? Social media is growing, but at the end of the day, we're small fish in a rather large pond, but we're playing our part. We're not sitting here going, well, we don't have 1 million subscribers on Facebook, so what the hell? No. But we're supporting Jonathan Cousens. We're supporting Mike Rowe. In other words, we could come together on that. And to me, it's like taking all, let's say, some larger pieces, some smaller pieces, okay, bringing them all together, but putting those pieces together. I think this is where the movie's important is, but those pieces get put together on a foundation. And the foundation is not in pieces. The foundation is solid, okay? And I think that's what we need to get back to, is recognizing we don't exist in a vacuum. America actually has a foundation, and we need to get back to it. That's my rant, and I'm sticking to it. Did you have a comment on that, John?
Yeah, I think that's what makes our nation so great. I mean, look at the very, very beginning. Boston, Philadelphia, the large markets, if you will, they came together in Philadelphia, but they also took the same vote with South Carolina. So the small guy, the little guy with little population. I think if we use our voice, whatever market or whatever share of people we have influence of, and come together, join with the big guys, join with the small guys, and say, hey, we're going to say there is still something worth standing for, there are values and freedoms that we cherish and hold dear, then I think our country continues to have hope and optimism as it looks to the future. But it only happens whenever the big guys don't take the small guys for granted, and the small guys are able to say, hey, we're going to all come together under one big banner of freedom. And I think that's what Something to Stand For, our movie, does really well, is communicate, those values and freedoms here in the United States. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Joe Rossinello, where do you want to go?
I want to talk about Ronald Reagan some more because he was a very significant figure. Ronald Reagan was from California. He was a movie star, grew up in Illinois. He was friends with Tip O'Neill, who was a big Irish guy from Massachusetts. They couldn't be more different. They're different men. They have different backgrounds. They're different men. Yet, they went out and had beers. They were friends. Yet, they disagreed. Why can't we do that? You see, I view there's a lot of disputes in the religious world, what's ecumenicalism. I look at differences as simply this. Let's agree to disagree. I have friends who are Jewish. They're my friends. You don't believe in Christ? I do. And it's my job to show you that Christ is God by the way I live. And you're my friend, and I'll be your friend. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Do we have to just go berserk and hate people and beat them over the head? Can't we just be friends? And where we don't agree, just leave it there. Okay, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you there. Let's go out. We'll talk about something else. Why don't we have a beer? Let's go to lunch. There's a lot of things we could talk about, common things. This, we know we don't agree. So let's not focus on that. Let's focus on what we agree on, and let's grow it from there. Talk about what Reagan did with Tip O'Neill, and talk about how I think we can do that. I really do, John. I don't think we're trying to do something crazy here. Regular people, we do it on our street. When I mow the lawn, I talk to my neighbors. They don't all agree. I'm married to an African-American woman. I have 5 kids and I'm a practicing Catholic. Let me just explain to you. On my street, that's not the common theme. Everyone's cool with me because I'm cool with everybody else and we all get along.
yeah, I think the phrase is common ground, finding the common ground that we can all stand on together. And, like I said before, whether you're right, left, Republican, Democrat, I think our common ground, if we choose it to be, is freedom and the value of freedom. And another common ground is recognizing the sacrifice of our military members that have given their lives for our freedom. That's what this movie does. If the very least thing that this movie is common ground, then that's the real reason to go out and see it, because you can talk about it with your friends. I mean, it is a very it's a very big point whenever you say, hey, there are beliefs that I hold dear that I'm going to fight for, and then there are beliefs that we can talk about and discuss, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to shake your hand, So I'm a huge fan of being able to split the divide and say, this is something for every American, this is something for every family, and they should go see the movie on June 27th through July 4th. Again, shameless plug, but there you go.
No, Joe and I are all about shameless plugs. Don't even worry about it. We have our authors on here. We plug away as far as we're concerned. Hey, if again, one more time, if you think you have something, don't worry. We talked about the marketplace. Jonathan Coussens joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. If the market doesn't like what you're doing, the market will let you know. Okay. But in the meantime, yeah, we're going to plug away. We think you have something to say, the authors we have on the show, other writers and editors of magazines and things like that, then yeah, I want everybody to know. I want everybody to know about this movie. I hope this movie makes $300 million in 7 days. So,
And you
so
said
I'm with you on
something
that, brother.
important, John, too.
Nothing shameless about that plug.
Vote with your money. Like, I think sometimes we get out of context, like what we could do as people. Vote with your money. This is a solid film that's putting forth something positive. People, vote with your money. You can do that. You control your money. There's so many things you can't control. You can't control what's going on in the Ukraine. You can't control what's going on in Israel. You can't control going to the movies. around 4th of July with your family and seeing something nice, seeing something good. This is what we can do. And to Joe's point, we all have something to do. Everybody has something to do, something to contribute to. That's my shameless plug, John. And
Well,
that's what we do.
that's great. That's great. I appreciate it.
No, and that's the thing. So let me ask you, let's go. We have a few minutes left. MLK, all right, figures prominently in this film. Okay. So I mean, again, I don't want to give away too much. You know, Jonathan goes, we don't want to give away too much, but how does he figure into the film? What are, let's say, some things you could talk about in terms of MLK in the context of this film?
Yeah, I think one thing that we wanted to highlight is that the dream is still alive, that we are always making progress. That sometimes we look back in our history and we say, "Oh, what about that? And that's ugly." Or what about that? We did that as Americans. But we're a nation that's constantly under construction. And to recognize that and say, hey, we're still making improvements, but let's celebrate the great men and women who have sacrificed so that we have that progress. You know, without giving away a bunch of spoilers, I will say that this movie is is a uh, is a big part in making sure that that progress continues and that we recognize the sacrifice of those heroic people that have given their lives, in the case of MLK, for what they truly believe and that dream.
Absolutely. Mike Rowe presents Something to Stand For. The producer, director, Jonathan Coussens, with us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. The movie's going to be out on the 27th. It's going to be out in theaters for 7 days. So make sure Something to Stand For movie. Go buy tickets. Joe Resinello.
You know, you mentioned something, and this was a reoccurring theme throughout this conversation. America is under construction. Mike Rowe talks about dirty jobs, rolling up his sleeves, getting dirty, and working. Um, Exile and return is a common theme amongst men. We go away from God and we return to God. Um, and I think we have to look at that in the context of America to a degree as well. Exile and return. When we look at things like that, I think we see it from the long term perspective as opposed to what's happening right now. We're a young nation compared to nations of the world. I mean, I think we lose focus and sometimes we throw up our hands. I throw up my hands. You could look at nations like France, Spain, centuries they've been around. Talk about the exile and return, looking in a long term perspective, not getting down, being positive, because I think we learn when we're in exile. And when we return better than ever.
Yeah, I think it's a theme in the Bible, you know, to everything there is a season. There's sowing, there's reaping. So there is a seasonality even to nations and even to politics. And so one thing that I think we highlight in our film is that we have to remember where we've come from in order to keep optimism and hope for our future. Where we're at doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be here forever. And I think a lot of times because of the onslaught of 24/7 news, all of the media and what do they call it? Like all the retargeting on social media, we think there's never going to be a way out. Well, there's always going to be tomorrow. And that was what our founders thought whenever they were in the middle of the war for independence. That is what the civil rights leaders thought whenever they were in the middle of the fight for civil rights. In their present time, they knew tomorrow had hope. And I think we have to keep that in mind. And that's what this movie does. It's saying, let's look at our past with gratitude, but let's look to the future with optimism. And I think that's what Reagan did, to your point earlier. And that's a story worth telling. And that's a story worth seeding the next generation with so that those seeds become a harvest.
No, absolutely. You know, one of the things I like about Mike Rowe is the fact that I never feel like he's talking down, even though I agree with him on the things that he says, the ideas that he puts forth. Whether I would be a liberal or a conservative or Democrat or a Republican, I say, oh, he's just a regular guy.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to see that's one of the things I think that's overlooked, particularly with the media, is that your larger audience are regular people.
Yeah. Okay.
When we see elitism, we smell it. We know it. Mike Rowe's not that. The dude is grounded. Okay. And I think I get to speak for Joe too. That's what I like about him is that I never feel like he's talking down to me. He's actually trying to build me up. He gives a damn enough about my life. Okay. Maybe not directly, but my life and my well-being and the well-being of my wife and my son. Okay. That he gets out there into the breach, like you said, as Joe and I are trying to do. But he's the everyman.
Yeah.
He's the everyman. And that's the great part about him forget about what his presentation, him as a person. I think that's great about him.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Mike is the same guy on TV as he is, having beer, and I can attest to that. I've been working with him for 4 years, and what I thought was going to be hilarious was, in our movie, Mike goes to DC. He goes to the swamp. Okay, now we don't focus on the swamp at all. We don't focus on the problems of the swamp currently. We don't focus on the most current issues that are dividing our country. But what we focus on is the everyday, ordinary Americans, just like he's done his entire career with dirty jobs, that have changed our country for the better and have given us a hope and a future. And I think that's what will make this movie a success, is that we're not talking about elitists. We're not talking about extremists on the right or the left. What we're talking about is everyday Americans who held tight to their core belief systems and fought for freedom and sacrificed for our country. And that's what makes this movie great for Independence Day, is because it reminds our audience that we still have something we're standing for. There's still something great about our country, and we still have a great future ahead of us.
And that's the thing. I mean, just looking at it again, just from a regular blue collar point of view, that's the whole point. Is like, okay, you could disagree on foreign policy. You could disagree on a lot of different things. I could get to cut my throat because like, is that the nation we've become? Is that got to walk down the street, got to worry about getting punched in the face because of a particular person you may or may not have voted for? That's not America. That's why the movies like this are supremely important to remind us to say, dudes, relax. You're out there trying to burn things down for no freaking reason, okay? Or maybe you have a reason, but it's off somewhere in bizarro world. Joe Resinello, I think we have about 3 minutes left with Jonathan Coussens. So let's see if we could squeeze in one more topic if you want to bring in.
Just real quick, do you think tribalism is here to stay or going? Political tribalism, we all talked about it roundabout. I like to think it's starting to wane. I like to think that we could kind of shy away from that and get to core beliefs. What do you think personally, John? Is tribalism here to stay? Is it a phase? Or are we going to move past it?
I think we've always had tribalism, Joe. I mean, the only non-tribalist was George Washington, the only non-political party president in our history. So I think there will always be people on their sides of the aisle. But what we're seeing happen is people recognizing that there is more common ground than what people have been told before. And this movie points out the common ground. It points out the things in our past that give us something to stand for. I mean, it's the title of our movie, but those things, those values, that courage, the determination, the perseverance, the valor that our military service members display, those are the things that make our country worth fighting for, worth standing for. And I think if we recognize those and acknowledge those things where we do have common ground, again, this movie isn't right, left, Republican or Democrat. This movie is patriotic. And that's where common ground exists, under patriotism, under the firm belief that we are going to be better tomorrow than we are today, because we're looking to the future with hope and optimism, not looking to our past as problems, but looking at what our founders gave us in order to build our foundation on.
No, and that's a great place to end it, Jonathan. Because At the end of the day, if we're going to survive as a nation, then hey, look, Joe and I are very opinionated guys. You might have caught that in the course of this interview, okay?
Just a little bit,
But
Joe.
just a little bit, I know. But the idea is that we still recognize the reality, what our country's all about, our founding principles, how we go about trying to make society. Hey, I have my views, you have yours. We vote on things. But if we're going to tear ourselves apart, I would say to people, well, then just think of your kids. Is this what you want for them? And we're so happy. Number one, we're very grateful, Jonathan, you came on the show to talk about this with our audience. Okay. And for those of you who might just be joining us, Mike Rowe presents Something to Stand For is the movie. So it's something to stand for .movie. You could go there and buy the tickets. Jonathan, I'm sure there's like a geographic locator on there so people can find a theater near them,
Oh
correct?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. If you go to the website, something to stand for movie, click buy tickets. The movie's in theaters all over the country, Cinemark, Regal, AMC. So I'm sure there's a theater near them. It's a great family movie. Go see it the weekend before the 4th of July, so that way you can celebrate the 4th with your family out with fireworks. It's a unifying movie. Bring everybody, bring your family, bring your friends. It's something that I'm sure you'll leave laughing, crying, and hopefully reflecting on what makes our nation so great.
Maybe we should do a little bit more of that as a nation. Reflect. That's a great place to end the interview. Jonathan Coussens, thank you, brother, for coming on the show. We really appreciate anything you're doing, no matter what it might be, or you just want to come on and talk with a couple of loudmouth Italians from New Jersey. You are more than welcome here, brother. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. And thank you all out there for joining us at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content. Please follow Joe and I at the Front Line with Joe and Joe all across social media. So on X and Rumble in particular, we're focusing there because we know the hammer is going to drop at some point from YouTube and Facebook. We'll leave that aside for now. And follow this film wherever you see it. So thanks once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.